Black Panther is written and directed by Ryan Coogler, and it's the latest installment in the Marvel Universe. Now, this is just one of those films that it's just kind of impossible to ignore its hype, because the hype has just been immeasurable. This is just one of the most hyped movies that I've ever had the pleasure to witness. And it's got ridiculously high critical scores on both IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. People were really excited for this movie. I feel like some people really already loved it before it came out. But now that I myself have gotten the chance to see it, what do I think about it? I mean, it's a good movie. I mean, there's no denying that this is a good superhero movie. You know, most people that have watched me already know that I'm not really the biggest, I'm not really huge into superhero films that much. You know, I enjoy them still. Not saying that I don't really get any enjoyment out of them. I definitely am entertained by them. I appreciate the craft that goes into that goes into making these films. But for some reason, you know, it's just, if somebody told me that I could only own 5 movies in my entire lifetime, none of them would be superhero movies, to be honest with you. Not even close. But that's kind of an aside. This movie is a good movie. I do have issues with it, as I do with most superhero films, and most of the issues are something that's not, it's not something that is just exclusive to Black Panther. These are just kind of issues that I kind of find reoccurring within most superhero films. But I really enjoyed the hell out of Black Panther. I actually was more entertained by this movie than I thought I would. It took me a little while to really get into this movie. I felt like it had a nice, strong start with trying to convey the origin of the story. That was really visually appealing to watch and unfold. But I feel like after the movie tried to get started, I felt like some of the directing and writing was a little flat and was kind of just the you know, paint by numbers kind of product that you get from every superhero movie. And none of it was really standing out to me. None of it was really doing a good job at immersing me into the film. To be quite honest, I mean, I think it took the film a good 15 to 20 minutes, maybe even longer, for me to actually be invested into this movie and actually feel like I was in this film. But I think once it really got going, once it really got into the meat of this film, I feel like it became much stronger than what I previously thought it was. I feel like this movie did a great job at conveying social and political themes throughout it, because it didn't hammer you over the head with it constantly, and it wasn't blatant about it. It was most of it was fairly subtle. It's something that's, you know, more beneath the surface and wasn't just spoon-fed to you like it is in some movies. And I thought they actually did a really good job at handling that aspect and not being too blatantly one-sided, blatantly pandery in any way. And that was kind of refreshing with this film, because that was one of the biggest things that I was worried about. But it actually handled that very well, and I'm glad that it did, and I'm pretty impressed by that. The villain in this movie, played by Michael B. Jordan, is probably one of the best villains that I've ever witnessed out of the Marvel Universe. I really enjoyed his character. I found there to be lots of substance within his character. Also, just staying on topic of the villain, this movie kind of plays with your predictive ability when it comes to the villain aspect, because it kind of presents you 2 villains in this movie that you're not really sure who is the main one and who is the one that's going to go away, you know, early on. And you do figure out that soon. But I really enjoyed both villains that were in this movie, because there's a sub-villain who I thought actually had a pretty funny personality, and he was kind of charismatic in his own way, and he was pretty enjoyable to watch on screen. Then you had Michael B. Jordan, who was pretty enjoyable to watch on screen, but in a very, like, kind of dark way, because you don't really, throughout this movie, you don't really like his character for obvious reasons. But as revelations start to come out about his character, you kind of can understand his frustration and his anger that he's going through. And, you know, that's really refreshing and unique, because, you know, most superhero movies, you know, especially Marvel films, have been known to kind of have these cookie cutter villains that they kind of just throw in there and don't really have much substance or much weight to them. With this film, it's a complete 180. You know, you can definitely tell that they put a lot of time into the villain character of this film. And one could even say that the villain character almost kind of has more substance than the main character played, which is Black Panther. The action scenes in this movie are pretty badass. The film makes you wait for them to come, but I feel like once they come, they definitely do pack a punch. There are some parts in between, like as far as pacing is concerned, to where like I'm not gonna lie, like if someone asked me if I was 100% engaged in this movie all the way through, you know, I'd be lying if I say I was. There's parts in this movie that I felt like were kind of slow and I wasn't really invested in it too much. And, you know, I don't know if that's the way it was with everybody. Maybe some people were completely engaged in this entire film. But I feel like there were just parts in this movie that slowed down a bit for me. But there were parts that weren't either. There were parts without when there wasn't any action that I felt like I was completely satisfied with the part in between before the action came. There were some parts where it would really display the chemistry between Black Panther's family with his sister and then his mother and then also the past with the dad. And I feel like the chemistry between Black Panther and his sister was actually done pretty well. At first, I didn't think it was gonna be done pretty well because, like I said, the first 15 minutes of the movie, I thought that the writing and the film direction was a little flat. But as the film goes along, their chemistry kind of grows, and there's some humor thrown in there that feels natural. And I felt like that really worked for the film, and it also worked for the chemistry and the believability of these characters. The soundtrack and score I thought was made pretty well for this film. There were some parts where I thought the soundtrack and score just really hit home with the kind of atmosphere and the kind of tone that they were going for. But I feel like some of the cues for some of the score it didn't hit the best. And what I'm talking about is just kind of this authentic African voice, not really the tribal instruments, but just the voice. Sometimes when it would cue on, it didn't really hit the way I think it wanted to, but it wasn't a complete miss. I just feel like it didn't hit again as much as they thought it was going to. But that's just kind of a little nitpick from the score and soundtrack. Overall, I think the score and soundtrack is, again, very well done. And if I'm going to really just talk about, again, like I told you at the beginning of this video, the really main issues I have is not really exclusive to this. It's kind of apparent in most superhero films. And this issue is just, you know, it has to do with expositional dialogue. It has to do with some humor not really working, it being a little corny. It has to also do with, you know, the story not really being anything groundbreaking. You know, the plot can be very predictable at times. And it can be very paint by numbers, very, very run-of-the-mill as far as Marvel superhero movies are concerned. You know, but I don't think really anybody's worried about that. You know, I just think I'm just kind of like the artsy-fartsy douchebag who just I want a superhero movie to be, you know, a little bit more original. But, you know, that's just, you know, if I'm just being honest and if you want me to tell you, you know, issues that I personally have with the film, you know, it would have to be those things because, you know, as far as spoon-fed dialogue, you know, there's just times where, again, something that's apparent in most superhero films, it will visually show you something, and then it'll have a character just spout it out through just kind of this spoon-fed dialogue. And that happens not too much in this film, but it happens a few times. And it's just, you know, when stuff like that happens, it just takes me out a bit. And as far as some of the humor, again, like, it was really only like within the first 20 minutes. There was some humor that just, you know, again, it just didn't work. It kind of goes with that spoon-fed dialogue too. There was like kind of this hybrid of this spoon-fed humor that didn't really work the best. And it had to do with Black Panther liking Lupita Nyong'o's character, and it's like, oh, don't freeze. And, you know, he freezes, and we see him freeze when he sees her, and it's, haha, you know, it's funny because we visually see it, but then, you know, later on, you know, you have a character saying, hey, you froze, and then, you know, haha, I guess, but it's kind of like, you know, we saw that already. You know, we saw that he froze. We don't need another character coming in saying, hey, you froze. Like, I don't know. It's that kind of spoon-fed dialogue that kind of annoys me. And to kind of add insult to injury, that happens again later on where he freezes when he sees her, and then you have another character saying, hey, he froze. And I was like, oh my God, why? But, you know, I don't want to dock this movie that much for that because, like I said, this is not exclusive to this. This is something that I just usually have problems with when it comes to superhero movies. I really found myself enjoying it. I had a lot of fun watching it. I wasn't fully engaged, like I said. You know, there were some parts where I was kind of bored. But, you know, for the most part, just this film gave me pretty decent film going experience. It's a pretty good superhero movie overall. So I'm gonna give Marvel's Black Panther a 7.5 out of 10. Those are my quick off-the-cuff thoughts about it. I'm gonna be really pissed if, you know, I forgot to mention stuff or if I feel differently because I literally just got out watching the movie no more than probably 25 minutes ago. So this is just me naturally just giving my thoughts to you. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you really enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the Misfit Pawn channel to be updated on more film-related content.